Mustafi. Bellerin! Brilliant! 2-2!
Hector Bellerin, Hector Bellerin. Na, 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 na. That's a song. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Welcome to a frustrating second half post-match here on Saved by the Bellerin. If you joined us for the halftime, you remember we talked about Arsenal being wasteful in that dominant second half of the first half, where they had a chance to get a second goal after taking a 1-0 lead. That came back to bite them. Kept some control early in the second half. It looked like Mikel Arteta had the game in hand, made two substitutions around the 74th minute, bringing on Eddie Nketiah for Alexander Lacazette, and then also bringing in Joe Willock for Bukayo Saka. But in those cases, within a minute, the plan just all went sideways. Eddie was called for a red card, a dangerous play. Let's begin with that. Any question, Ryan? Let's go to you. Any question about the legitimacy of that card?
No, I think it's right, judging by the rules. And yeah, unfortunately, he was late, high foot, and he had to go. Unfortunately for us.
All right, and obviously, aside from putting Arsenal down one man, it diminished the striker's capability. And then, in this next round of substitutions, something very puzzling, Sam. He took Mikel Arteta took off his last remaining striker. He took Aubameyang off around just before injury time.
Yeah, I can understand why we've done that, because obviously, if you can't win the game, don't lose it. So we'll take a point in this instance. Unfortunately, it was the case of the red card. And the funny thing is, though, as soon as Auba come off, we decided to push up. We started to have a little bit of bravery about us and try and push on. It's just a bit baffling that obviously we didn't do that with our striker on the pitch, but yeah, it is what it is. It's deflating. But yeah, if you can't win, don't lose, basically.
All right. Going forward, we'll bring it back to the match. Seems to have a ripple effect. Spurs coming up on Sunday. Obviously, Nketiah with the red card is no longer available. Maybe the thinking was to get Aubameyang off and not to injure him, not to play him 88 minutes. There were 8 minutes of injury time. But at this point, he'd gone almost a full 90. I don't really see an advantage there to keeping him off for the Spurs match. Dean, does that really constrict his options going into the weekend?
Yes and no. I mean, you kind of feel that as Lacazette came off earlier than Aubameyang, he might be wanting to rest him a little bit more. However, personally, I tend to think he'd go with the traditional positions, Saka left wing, Pepe right wing, Auba up top, as I call for pretty much every week. Well, I don't think it only limits it in the sense that he won't have that third kind of striker option, so to speak, and where he kind of always plays Aubameyang on left wing, you kind of argue that. But I mean, there are guys out there possible to come in for the bench, but I don't think guys that are ready to be chucked into a North London derby. So I mean, personally, I'd like to just see, our traditional wingers with Auba up top, and then you've got Lacazette as an impact sub for the striker position.
All right, and let's go back. Obviously, when the red card occurred, 75th minute, long way for Arsenal to go, a man down. They gave it a run, but in the 83rd minute, Leicester got an equalizer. Some controversy as to whether the call was onside. Ball skipped through, wound up on the toe of Jamie Vardy, who tipped it in. But it did seem, there was a lot of review of VAR, that it was touched by a Leicester player along the way. Sam, how did you see it?
I personally thought it touched. I Iosi Perez's studs on the way through, as you could see by the bounce. But obviously, it's a difficult one because it's very fine margins with very fine fractions in terms of it. Obviously, if you're going to have something like VAR, you need something like they've got in Monday Night Football, where they've literally got a 360-degree pivot of that moment in play. But unfortunately, sometimes it happens your way, sometimes it doesn't. And unfortunately, today it didn't go our way. But as I say, my personal thoughts was it got a very, very slight touch on the way through. But what can you do?
All right. And Ryan, we talked about it at the beginning of the second half. This is how well would this team defend a lead? Would they push on for the second? Would they drop back? Very sluggish at the opening of the half. Leicester was on them pretty quickly. Not the first time this has happened. In fact, this is one of the foibles. Even with all the improvements that we've seen under Arteta, they really seem to have trouble coming out after the intermission.
Yeah, we seem to let teams back into the game straight after half time. We let them attack our goal way too much. We saw it against Wolves. We saw it against Norwich. And I don't know what it is. Are we still mentally in the changing room? It's baffling to me because we always seem to have the trouble of killing teams off straight after half time. Because if we took the momentum from the first half and put it straight into the second half, we should have been outside. But we didn't. We let them back into the game, and we didn't really. From what I was watching, it didn't really seem like we had much of a game plan. It just seemed like we was trying not to concede for most of that second half.
All right, Dean. Let's try to keep this in the big picture. Obviously, as Sam said, echoing the line from the Wenger days, if you're not going to win, don't lose. And that seemed to be the final kind of concession at the end. I'm going to play not to lose, when it seems that the red card had just depleted the squad too much. But in the bigger picture, they still got a point, right? They're still in the race for European football. Do you think this will affect the team's mindset?
A year ago, I would have said yeah. Even 2 years ago, I would have said yeah. You kind of saw right up until the last few minutes that heads had slightly dropped, but at the same time, I feel they could hear Arteta not only on the sideline, but in their heads as well. They tried to pick it up as much as possible. They tried to pick it up and keep going. They try, there was definitely a fire in the belly. And I don't feel like Arteta is going to let them let their heads hang, basically. I don't feel he's going to let it affect them. He's got a way, you can already tell with these players. And as much as we could talk about the Wenger era, Arteta's got his own style. It's clear, and I just don't feel I feel he's a very good man manager, and I don't feel he's going to let this affect them. I think he'll be back to the drawing board. As has been said, you can't win, don't lose, and we didn't lose. I did say, as much as I thought we were going to win this today, I've said all along when we've talked about the run of 4, Wolves, Leicester, Spurs, Liverpool, that out of Wolves or Leicester, we were going to draw one of them. I did say that, and it looks like this is the one. So I just feel it'll be back to the drawing board. Now we've got a long 5 days before Spurs. So, I'm pretty sure we've got, as one of the lads said earlier, we've got a little bit more rest time than they have. So I just thought it'd be back to hard training, heads up, chins up, and crack on with it. And, as we always say, everything goes out the window in a North London derby. So,
yeah, and it is the derby. I mean, you think that would energize the squad. You don't have to do anything other than point to the schedule and say, here comes Spurs. But we talked about it earlier in the pregame, that Arteta's been relying a lot on his youth players. It seemed that it was kind of pushed a little bit too far. Now, it wasn't his fault. But again, we don't even mention the name Mesut Ozil these days because he has not been available in any of the post-COVID matches. But a name that possibly could have been available, really seemed to miss Nicola Pepe today. Sam, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, but I think that's a lot to do with circumstance, because if Nketiah doesn't get that red card, I honestly think Pepe was the next sub to come on. Obviously, change then happens with the red card. Then I could see why Arteta done what he did. You wait 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to see how the game then pans out. You can see we was on the back foot. The team didn't really try to get any rhythm in their passing. It was literally get the ball, hoof it. So I don't think Pepe would have been the ideal solution. In this instance, you literally need to pack out the midfield so that, as I said earlier, if you can't win, you don't lose. So we packed it out, and unfortunately, in this instance, grind out a 1-1 draw. But realistically, we should have got 3 points today. But also, in testament to that, you got to say to what a good job Arteta's done, because if this was probably about before COVID, we were probably looking at a loss here anyway. So just trying to put a bit of a positive spin on it. 1 point's better than none. It's less than 3, but it's better than nothing. So, yeah, it's gutting, but it's positive in terms of the direction of where we're going.
All right, Ryan. Let's not dwell on this. I mean, we can make another round. We're just going to kind of put ourselves in a lower mood. But Spurs coming up on the weekend. Arsenal does get 2 extra days compared to Spurs, who play, I believe, on Thursday. That should give them an advantage. Obviously, Nketiah is not going to be available, but you still have a lot of options. Looking at that match, pushing this result aside, what do you think Arteta's approach would be in his first London derby in this case against Jose Mourinho?
I think he's going to take it to Mourinho. He's going to pick his best attacking formation, because we've seen Spurs recently, they're not very good defensively. So instead of acting like Emery would and being all scared, put like 5 midfielders and 7 defenders or whatever he did on the pitch, just put his best attacking formation, best attacking players, and take the game to Tottenham. And he's not going to have to do much with the youngsters, because they've been brought up through the Arsenal academy, through supporting Arsenal, and they all know what beating Tottenham means to every Arsenal fan.
All right.
So I don't think he's going to need to get them hyped or anything. So
I mean, we're not going to have to get hyped. It's a North London derby, empty stadium. That's not really going to change. I mean, this team does seem, Dean, to work. They've worked pretty well in these empty stadiums. Those last few minutes in Brighton aside, today they seemed as fatigued as much as anything else in those final minutes. But they didn't really. Again, we said maybe they looked a little down, but they didn't look deflated, I'd say.
No, I'd agree. I tend to agree with you there, Raf. I don't think it was so much disappointed that the goal occurred. And personally, I'd like to say I feel that the ball hit Jose Perez's studs in that instance. I feel the volley was offside. I do feel a little bit unlucky with that, but it is what it is. So I just feel the boys are probably a bit more disappointed than anything that they even allowed that to happen, let alone just could not being able to grind out the win. But as you say, North London derby on the way, form and class and everything else kind of goes out the window with that. Mikel said the other day, I think it was yesterday or something, that the Arsenal players have actually been thriving on not having fans at the stadium. Not sure sort of what he really kind of meant in example, whether it's about the negative reactions or whether it's just the fact that it must be that really. But he said they're thriving on not having the fans there. And I think for us, this may benefit. It's his first time going to Spurs' new stadium, first North London derby, and there's going to be no fans. I feel personally Spurs would look at it the other way. I feel they'd want the fans there. They'd need the fans there to big push on this. I reckon the boys can really go there and do a job. I really reckon they can, and I reckon Mikel's the guy to hype them between now and Sunday and get them ready for this.
All right, and Mikel's going to have motivation. Obviously, the disappointment here, it's where they're going in, where they would have been going in on a 4-game win streak. Sam, Spurs have not had the easiest run either. Two managers really seemingly going in different directions. If you compare the points that they've received, they've earned since they came onto their new jobs, and both of these are mid-season replacements. Arteta, for the mess he's inherited, really seems to have stabilized his squad a little bit better than Mourinho has with Tottenham.
Yeah, with Arteta, obviously, we all know the problems that we had with Emery. We was playing dull, boring football, and he's brought back I wouldn't say brought back, he's bringing back a culture of Arsenal that we know and love. And that is something that this team desperately needed, because you could tell they was on low ebb. They wasn't enjoying training under Emery. They was taking a mick under Emery, if you go by the reports. Obviously, Lundberg come in, tried to stem the tide, didn't quite happen. Arteta come in, started implementing his ideas. As we know, COVID done us a bit of a break in terms of that, because then he's able to interact with his team, get to know them a lot more. And obviously, we've seen the results of that post-COVID. With Mourinho, Mourinho and Tottenham, for me, they just seem to be regressing. And that's not being biased. Like, their football is so boring now. They literally rely on Son and Kane and Lo Celso. That is literally 3 players that you have to look after. If you mark them out the game, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think they've got anything. I honestly do not think this Tottenham team will be a worry for Arteta, regardless of suspensions, injuries, whatever. Whatever we've got out on the field, Arteta will nullify them. Not that you have to nullify much, because they don't really offer anything. But yeah, I honestly think we can get a really positive result against Spurs. Really positive, because the start difference between the two coaches is different ends of the spectrum. Like, Mourinho can use all of his experience and big up his team as much as he wants, but the proof is on the pitch. We've seen the way that he plays, the way the team plays. Like, the game at Everton, I nearly fell asleep that it was that poor, honestly. But yeah, I personally don't feel any threat from Tottenham in the way that they've been playing, and I don't feel a threat from Mourinho. When he starts coming out big, that's because he's trying to cover something up, and I think that's what he's going to start doing this week.
All right, Ryan, give you last crack at this. But Mourinho likes to play the mind games. We probably expect them going into this. Do you think Arteta's going to be phased at all by this? He's seen it as a player. He's seen it as an assistant manager at City. Does that factor at all into his preparations or into the game itself?
No, I don't think so. He's learned under Guardiola. Guardiola was the one that always remained calm under these mind games. He never got involved. And I think Arteta is cut from the same cloth. So I don't think he'll get involved in any of that. He'll just focus on our team, how he can beat them, and that's it. He won't listen to Mourinho. He knows Mourinho is stupid. So,
all right, you're already in London Derby midweek form, shall we say? In the time we have left, all right, let's revisit some topics that we brought up in the pregame. I mean, we talked briefly about the news that's come out in the last 24, 48 hours regarding Matteo Guendouzi. Revealed that Arsenal has put a £40 million price tag on him. and that has drawn interest from, I believe, Inter Milan, Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid at minimum. There may be other clubs that are involved. Dean, I'm going to go back to you because we just touched on this. We didn't go into great detail. There's a second part of that story that Arsenal would consider swaps, and we kind of left that hanging in the air. So we have a little time. Let's talk a little bit about possible swaps. Looking at those squads, are there any combinations or any single players or any combination of players that you could see in a swap deal?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the obvious ones like Atletico, Thomas Partey, at Barca. I mean, there's a few you could have, including Coutinho. I mean, what was the other one? Juventus, was it? Interesting. I mean, Inter, you got the obvious ones in there, but then you got obviously Juventus. I think were another team.
Or it might have been Juventus. I may have misspoke because I think the name you and I were kicking about pre-match was Rabiot. So,
yeah, Rabiot, or even Dybala. I mean, there's a few you could look at. Obviously, some of these players would obviously fall in a higher cash value than Matteo. But with swaps, as it happens, sometimes a bit of cash is also passed along. So, I mean, it depends on who you're looking at. Him and Partey are roughly around the same value. Dybala's good 20 odd million more in terms of value, I'd say. 25 million more. But there's a few. Coutinho, Dybala, Partey. They're the three obvious ones, I think. Demiral, I think, is another one, centre back at Juve. But they're the obvious ones, I think. Really.
all right. Another name that's come up. One of the players we discussed in great detail during the match, going into the match. Alexander Lacazette. There's a lot of speculation. Will he stay? Will he go? It seems, Sam, there's a little bit firmer news. It seems more likely, we can't say it's certain, but it seems more likely that Abba is going to stay based on internet chatter, based on stories that have come out. It does also appear, I believe it's L'Equipe that put it out, that Lacazette has drawn firm interest from clubs. We weren't sure if Arsenal was in. We thought they might want to sell him, but now it looks like they actually have a market, a concrete market. Probably similar situation to the Guendouzi situation. Are we looking at a swap? Are we looking at cash? Are there player combinations on the teams that are mentioned that intrigue you?
I think a swap could be possible with Atletico Madrid. Obviously, Partey's going to be the main one there. But I think that it might be more of we'll activate Partey's release clause, and then with that money, maybe a little bit more, they'll come back in for Laka. For me, Laka has got a market in Italy as well. But personally, where I see him is at Atletico Madrid. That's where I would see his next destination to be. Whether it be a swap or we pay you, you pay us, I don't know. But I think Atletico Madrid is going to be Lacazette's next club, personally.
All right, Ryan, those two names who seem to be drawing interest, do we really have to consider them? Obviously, they're not going to go together, or maybe they would. But is this a case where we have to consider them from Arsenal's perspective as a potential package, that the return from one factors into what you look at with the other player?
I don't think so. I think they've got their own entities. I think they've got their own price tags. I think with Lacazette, he may command a little bit more money because he's a striker and he scores goals sometimes. But then you could also say Guendouzi could fetch 50 million because he's 21 and he's quite young. And He's a decent
Right.
player.
We may seem to be having some technical difficulty with Ryan's connection, so we'll hopefully let's stay with the market. And let's say, well, actually, I'll ask you the same question. Do you have to think of one or the other? I mean, let's go back to Guendouzi. It's funny that when we first brought up this topic on the pod, Ryan seems to be coming back. I'll get back to you in a moment. But when we first brought up the Guendouzi situation, let's call it, all three of you were of the opinion that Arsenal needed to loan him, right? That's not part of the process anymore. We've also seen, seems a contraction. Are we in a situation now where these are just two players who, I mean, the manager clearly seems to like Alexander Lacazette, but is it, given Eddie Nketiah's maturity and what Arteta wants to do, that these are two players who just need to be elsewhere? Dean, is your connection there?
Sorry, mate. I thought you mentioned Sam's name because Ryan disconnected. Okay. So I'm not sure, mate. What to be honest. We're talking with Guendouzi. You mentioned Guendouzi. Yeah, sorry, your connection was really fuzzy when you were talking there.
Oh, I was asking if these are two players who really Arteta's spoken fondly of Lacazette, but are these two players who really need to be elsewhere for their own sake and for the club's sake next year?
Okay, yeah. So with Guendouzi, I just feel he's already made his bed. To be honest, as I said earlier, his entire attitude, his neglect for an apology, even, the understanding of the situation is he's not so much categorically down tools, but pretty much where he's training alone. He hasn't apologized. He's got players, staff, and Mikel pretty much rolled up. I just don't think his place is here at all now. And with the whole kind of thing about Lorient as well, before he even came to us, I just feel that's who he is, and there's no changing him. And at a club like Arsenal, with the stature and what we hold, I just don't feel they will find a place for him now with that attitude. In terms of Lacazette, obviously he doesn't. From what I've seen, he doesn't really have an attitude. He's very, he's always happy. He's always smiling. He's always energetic. He's with this and that. But there's a frustration with him, and I don't think it's a frustration that we can keep sort of holding on to. Obviously, you say Arteta spoke highly of him, admirably of him. He's a man manager, but also if you looked at the way that he was with him today when he came off and whatnot, and he was talking, I don't feel it's just about appeasing the player. I do feel he has that admiration for him. He does, he loves him as a player. And I was saying earlier that there was, Mikel said there's a thing about having to make really tough decisions at times. And I feel maybe the sort of having to let Lacazette go may be one of those things, one of those difficult decisions. I do feel the club are kind of actively looking to move him on now. But it's obviously, it's two ends of the same piece of string, really. Two different reasonings behind it. And one's obviously tougher than the other, but I don't feel that by the time next season starts and the window shuts, either of them will be at the club.
All right, Ryan, we've got you back. So I'm going to let you have the last word on the disappointing, frustrating Tuesday afternoon. North London Derby coming up on Sunday, 5 days from now. Anything special? Does Mikel Arteta just need to keep the car on the road between the lines? Anything special that he needs to do at this point in now shrinking season, 4 matches left?
No. I think particularly for the North London Derby, he just needs to throw quotes from previous legends and whatnot on the wall to say, read them, know what this club is about, and go and beat them. And that, if he said that to me and made me read quotes from Tony Adams, from Thierry Henry, I'd run through a brick wall for him. So that's all he needs needs to do. He just needs to keep the team focused and on job, and just see out the rest of the season as strong as we can.
All right, and with that, we close a long afternoon with you. We want to thank all of you who joined us on this first live set of video podcasts on Saved by the Bellerin. We will be back for the North London Derby, so more chat, more in-game, post-game, pre-game. Hopefully there's some better news before the match starts, and we'll have a better result to analyze on Sunday. But for Raphael, I want to say thank you again. For Sam, for Dean, and for Ryan, good night, everybody.